Hello, students. Today we have a simple task. We need to limit the level completion time, and we will do this with a timer. At the beginning of the game, we will start timing, and when the time runs out, we will stop the game. First, let's add elements to the user interface. We will create a plane. Place it in the top left corner and reduce it to the necessary size. This will be an icon with an image of a clock. To understand the necessary size, let's switch to the camera view. Rename the object to timer. Apply the scale. Now let's open the shader editor and create a material with the same name. Replace the shader with Amori PBR block. Find the clock file in the asset folder. If you do not have this file, you need to update the asset folder using the link in the description. Drag the file into the shader editor. Connect the alpha channel to the opacity channel. In the material settings, switch the transparency mode to alpha clip. Now you can choose a color. Add one more plane. We'll call it timer bar. A very important point. The transformation point of this object should be at the left side. Let's go into edit mode, select everything, press G, X, 1 and enter. Return to object mode and scale this plane so that it turns into a strip like this. Do not forget to apply the scale. Create a material with the same name. Again, change the shader to Amori PBR. Choose green color. The timer bar is ready. If we scale it on the x-axis, it will look like a time counter. Now let's write the mechanics. Our background is tied to the game init node. We will write the main part in it. But first, let's create a float type variable named timer. By default, let it be 0. Now we find the place where we spawn the player. And right after that, we assign the timer variable a value of 60. Meaning, as if we are timing 60 seconds. Now let's add a new chain. Start with the on timer block. Set the value to 0.1. Be sure to check the repeat box. At this interval, we will decrease the timer variable by the same value. Assemble the setter with a decrement of 1/10. This means that every tenth of a second, we will decrease the value of the timer variable by 1/10 of a second. Immediately after, connect the set object scale block. We will only change the x-axis, so we take the vector block, write 1, in the y and z fields, and connect the getter of the timer variable to the x-axis. In the object field, we indicate time bar. It is its scale that we will be changing. A couple of moments left to fix. Let's think about what will happen with our timer bar. Initially, the timer equals 60. And it is this number that we pass to the scale on the x-axis. Meaning, we are increasing the timer strip 60 times. But we need the strip to be at full scale when the timer is full. So, at a timer value of 60, the scale should be equal to 1. How to get 1 from 60? Just divide the value of the variable by 60. And one more point. What will happen when the timer equals 0? Correct, nothing will happen. We will just continue to decrease it, and the timer values will go negative. Consequently, the scale will also become negative. We need to stop this process as soon as the timer ends. We can do this with a gate block. Check the value of the variable. If it's greater than 0, then subtraction occurs. Let's see what we got. After the game loads, along with the character, a timer bar appears on the screen, which starts to gradually decrease. Excellent. Everything works. But when the timer stops, nothing will happen. But what should happen is the following. We must stop the game. Let's think about what stopping the game means. At a minimum, enemies should stop spawning. Live enemies that are on the screen should be destroyed. The player's control should be blocked. Perhaps text should appear on the screen, indicating that the level is complete. Let's start with the first point. I suggest we create another variable for the background, in which we will store the current state of the game. It will be a Boolean value. Accordingly, there are only two states. We are playing, or we are not. Let's call it isPlay. By default, let it be false. And at the game's initialization, we will assign it a true value right after the player is spawned. Now we move to the enemy spawn branch, and before spawning an enemy, we add a condition. If isPlay equals true, this time we can make do with a block is true. We connect it to a getter with the variable isPlay. Leave the object field empty, because the enemy spawn branch is also attached to the background. Now enemies will only spawn if the condition returns true. Let's return to the game init branch. As soon as the timer ends, we need to change the value of the isPlay variable to false. We connect a setter to the false channel. That's it. As soon as the timer equals 0, enemies will stop appearing on the screen. To avoid waiting a full minute every time we want to check another change in the code, I suggest we temporarily change the timer amount to 5 seconds. Excellent. Everything works. The spawn of enemies stops with the timer. Now let's make it so that the timer's stop will destroy all live enemies on the screen. I suggest we move to the enemy collision branch. In this chain, we have organized the mass destruction of enemies. This happens if the value of the variable weapon type changes to explode. Let's add another reason for the destruction of all living things here. To the false channel, we connect a block is false, and to it, we connect a getter with the variable isPlay. In the object field, this time it is necessary to specify the background. This condition will work if the variable isPlay equals false. And now let's combine these two reasons with merge block. We launch the game, wait 5 seconds. And we see that only the cubes are destroyed. And the skeletons remained alive. This is because the destruction of cubes and skeletons is written into separate branches. Therefore, we move to the skeleton collision branch. We find the chain where we destroy skeletons with an explosion, and add one more condition. Is false. Getter from isPlay. Choose background object. We combine both options with a merge block. Now everything works. Let's take care of the player. We move to the player input branch and think about how to prohibit player control. And basically, it's nothing complicated. To every key, we can add a condition if the variable isPlay equals true. But then we will need to add the same block of code in 4 places. I suggest prohibiting player control by changing the player speed to 0. Let's go to the game init branch. Right there, where we change is play variable to false, we add a setter for the player speed variable. Don't forget to specify the player object. Connect the float block and assign the variable a value of 0. That's it. After the game ends, we can't move. Now let's display a congratulatory text on the screen. Let's create text. Rename it to text number 1. Create a material named text. Change the shader and change the color. Hit tab, type level 1 complete. Hit tab again. In the object properties, disable default spawn. Open the text properties. Change the horizontal alignment to center. Now, in the game init branch, right after the end of the game, insert a 2-second delay and spawn the text. Let's deal with the coordinates. We need the text to appear in the middle of the screen. And for that, we can use background. Its transformation point is exactly in the center of the screen. But we need to raise the text so that it doesn't intersect with the background plane. So we take the background coordinates, split them by axis. X and Y we connect to the vector block, and in the z-axis, we write 1.1. We connect the vector to the transform block, and the transform block we connect to the transform channel. We forgot something else. If we wait a minute after the game ends, we will see that a box with weapons has appeared on the scene. We need to prohibit the spawn of boxes after the game ends. Open the box spawn branch and add a condition. Block is true. And getter from the isPlay variable. Leave the object field empty. That's it. Now boxes only spawn if we are playing. Now it's time for a break. Don't miss me. Bye for now.